Okay, I think we can get started. So this is a session on CSS Motion Path. My name is Willigers. I work in the style animation team, which is CSS and animation in Sydney. I've also recently joined the CSS working group, where the standards of, for example, CSS Motion Path are developed. So today I'll summarise some of the history of the Motion Path feature. I'll just describe where the specification's up to. I'll run through some examples using a JavaScript polyfill that was developed initially by 2 interns, and then I've taken it over once their internship finished. Then I'll run through where we're up to with Blink implementation, and run through any some challenges that I've encountered along the way. So, for many years, there's been Smile. It's only SVG. You can't animate general HTML on it. It's still being supported by Microsoft in Internet Explorer Edge, and that does let you animate along paths like that, and also let you animate the paths themselves. For example, the way of changing like that. But again, only for SVG. So then a couple of years ago, there was the standard for CSS Motion Path, and initially used these property names, which have since changed, which was approximately, gave you roughly what Smile gave you, but now for all of HTML. And we're also hoping that will also be acceptable to Microsoft, who've never been interested in implementing Smile. You couldn't animate the path itself, you could just animate along the path. And the spec was very short. It didn't cover a lot of details. For example, it didn't specify what the origin of the element was for rotation, because there were a few different options at the time. Should we have a new property? Should be the transform origin? It just wasn't clear. And around the same time also, there was an effort for CSS round display for loaded by watches to have like polar positioning and rotational method. And that was completely independent effort. So then, around last year, those polar positioning moved into the offset path spec, and all the properties changed their names. And we also got 2 extra properties: offset position and offset anchor. And so with offset path now, you can specify array path, which so you can specify a direction, and then array going in a particular direction from the offset position, and then if you animated the ray, the angle, then you could get like circular motion. And so the CSS round display spec got a lot shorter because you didn't have to deal with polar positioning anymore. And so, so there was a bit of pain last year when we renamed properties that we had already shipped. So to go from motion path to offset path. So the specification is a lot more detailed now than it was a couple of years ago. I've been adding a whole lot of examples to the spec, and also by testing the examples in implementations, for example, Blink and the polyfill, we've been able to correct minor details in the spec or correct the examples. We also have an active contribution from LG, for example, changing the spec to use the offset and to describe all the polar positioning. That was all done by a contributor from LG, who was also reviewing the web platform test that I've been writing as implementation progresses in Blink. So this is an example that is shipped today, and has been shipped for quite a while, originally with the old property names, where I've specified a path string in the SVG path string format. So it's like starting, move to a particular place, then move horizontally, and so on. And Z at the end means go back to the start of that path, or subpath. And by animating the distance, you get motion along the path. So that's shipped today. But what's next? This is polar positioning. So this is what I'm implementing now, and this example is running in a polyfill.
It's what kind of positioning?
Polar positioning.
Polar, okay.
Polar. Like you specify a distance, so my distance here is 100%, and then you specify the angle, which I'm animating to make it go around the round. And so, what distance does 100% mean? Well, that's specified in the offset path. So when I say closest side, it's the distance from the from the center, or the center of the offset, the original position or the offset position, to the closest side of the containing block. So from here, we'll like check each direction. Where's the closest side? The closest side is here. So 100% corresponds to that distance. And so as I animate the angle, that's why I get that moving in a circle. There are other options. And there's a slight variation where you can specify contain. And that says that distance that you specified before that circle, I want everything completely within that circle. And so everything moves in slightly. So it's like clamping to be within the circle. So, for example, if you had a circular watch display, the whole element can be visible. Instead of closest side, there's things like furthest side, which would be to here, or you could do furthest corner. And there's also another option which is a little bit unusual called sides, which is just the distance in that direction. And so as you change the direction, the actual distance varies to just whatever the distance is to the corner to the boundary of the containing block.
It's showing how long hours of the day actually feel rather than.
Yeah. Okay, so that's ray paths. Also, there's basic shapes. So this now I'm doing a lot of elements, placing them on a basic shapes which are circles, and I'm giving each of these circles a different radius, and so that's how I'm getting this spiral effect. Just different radii and the constant distance around the perimeter, and so it's giving me a spiral. And so this is it in polyfill. It's not. I haven't started the native implementation yet. There's these two properties, offset position and offset anchor. You can use them without specifying any path at all. And so if you it's an interesting way to use them is with percentages. So offset position percentage gives you a percentage of relative to the containing block. So 0, 0 is here, and like 100, 100 is down here. And the offset anchor is saying which point in my element goes to that position. And it defaults to using the same value as your offset position. That's what like the auto means, just use what offset position is. So if I'm down here, if my offset position is 100%, and my offset anchor is also 100%, that means the bottom right corner of my element needs to move to the bottom right corner of my containing block. So it's very easy to place things in the corner, for example, just using that. And so I've got these different elements, they're different sizes, but it doesn't really matter. Just by specifying offset position, I can get them very easily in the corners. You don't have to use the corners, but just shows you how easy it is to place things around your containing block using these properties. So where are we up to in Blink? So offset path, just simple path strings that shipped quite a while ago. Being able to change the animate the path, so we can do things like that wave animation we saw at the beginning. That's just had an intent to ship approved. So I can start. I've had an implementation in review for months, but during the intent to ship process, we've had a lot of conversations, and so the animation will actually be more general than what we originally anticipated. So you'll be able to animate between lines and splines, which is something new, so I'll have to write a whole lot of web platform tests for that. Offset position, I've got a change up for review that only works for very simple cases. So I'm from the style team, and to get this right, I need to know a lot more about, say, layout, page layers than I've needed to for anything else I've worked on in Week. So that's been a bit of a challenge for me, but so that I'll have to revisit that CL. But what I've implemented right now only works for simple cases, so it's not ready to land yet. Rays, I've got a CL in review that does everything except contain. So I've got closer side and all the others and sides, and it works perfectly well for if you do things in, say, PX, but as soon as you do percents, actually, yeah, if you just use PX, it's already landed. If you want to use percents, then my CL is not ready to land yet. And I haven't started the implementation for basic shapes or URL yet. And also the spec doesn't have a lot of examples yet, so I'll be adding more examples to the spec as I as I progress the implementation. So some challenges I've encountered while working on this project. The meaning of contain was very vague when I first started implementation, and like the examples in the spec were inconsistent with the text in the spec. So it took a while to clarify exactly what was meant. So there's a few different puzzles eventually, but now that's been resolved. Animating path strings. There hasn't been a lot of feedback from other browser implementers, like in the SVG working group, and most of their feedback has come from like independent contributors. So I'll need to be confident that what I'm working on is acceptable to all the other vendors, because as we heard this morning, if we don't get to consistency eventually between the browsers, then that's a bug, and I don't want to be introducing bugs. Another challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is working out the container blocks. Has been a coding challenge, and clarifying which point in the element should be at the position at the start of the path. That's something that the spec hasn't been clear on, and so that's something I need to clarify in the spec and add more examples. And I might need to actually modify something that we've already shipped because it just wasn't clear enough at the time. So thank you everyone for attention. Any questions?
Do you know the plan of all the browser vendors to implement?
Well, when I spoke to Ryan Bertels from Mozilla in Paris, he said he'd love to be implementing it, but he had to work on other things first. So I'm hopeful that it will get into Firefox next. Mm-hmm. No, I don't know what the other browser will do. But it's been a regular topic on the agenda at CSS working group meetings. So.
But it's supposed to cover more or less what Smile will do for SVG. So there's a one-on-one match, or?
I think it's slightly more general now, but also definitely does get all of HTML. But using CSS animation instead of smile animation, like we expected that's much more acceptable to Microsoft.
I was wondering about the web platform test that you mentioned. Is it difficult to test the animation? Because you have to check the position of over the time. It's
yeah, no, so I use web animation, so element.animate, and you can just pause the animation at any progress time and say, so you can say, at this time, this should be the value. Mm. And I think you can do something similar with CSS animations. Like, yeah, I've got web platform tests for CSS animations as well, and I can so basically say, I effectively pause it at halfway, and then you can say this should be the value at this time. Okay. So I've committed web platform tests for animation already.
I've never tried to write tests for animations. So that's curious.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't want it to be timing specific. It'll be flaky.
I guess a small correction for the first slide. It should say animate motion, not animate path, but devices.
Animate motion?
Yeah, that's the element in the smile.
Oh, what did I do wrong? Animate path. Animate motion, you're right. Yes. Yes, it's animate motion. And when I started typing this demo, I had animate path and I had to change it right later, and I forgot to change the slide. Yep. Okay. Do we have people here from LG? Yes. So the Jiho? Okay. Yeah.
She is my co-co. Same place.
Yes. So virtually all the spec edits for the past year have been by Jiho and myself.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.